Are you a fan of pro wrestling, comedy, and combat sports? Then we have the podcast for you because we cover that and much, much more.
Do you like to debate with your friends? Do we have the perfect segment for you? It's the 531, where we take any given subject, break it down to a top 5. From there, we debate it down to 3, and then into that number 1 spot.
If you want to get a hold of us, find us on our social medias. Search Working Fans Podcast on any major social media platform. And if you want to find the podcast, search for us on any major podcast platform, as well as YouTube.
Working Fans Podcast. We put in the work so you don't have to.
It is not easy to share this with the shorter commercial, though. Peek behind the curtains, folks. Anyway, guys, welcome to the Working Fans Podcast live show. AJ's on assignment at his job because people just can't show up to work. And we're going to be talking about, which I'm on our top 5 of the week later. But right now, we're going to start off talking about the top 5 Survivor Series of all times. AJ, before we get started on this, you were telling me earlier today when I sent you a text about what we were doing, and you responded with, Dave, I've prepped for this for over a week. And I'm like, AJ, we just came up with a topic a few days ago. But I was going to say, listen to the buzz. Hey, thanks, guys. Appreciate you, fam. But hey, listen, AJ, what are your thoughts about the Survivor Series before we go?
The Survivor Series is the worst pay-per-view of the year. It absolutely is freaking just sucks balls every year.
So you're not a fan. You know the vibe about Survivor Series. You don't like the Survivor Series. You're not a big fan even going back to the original concept in the early days.
Picking the top 5 Survivor Series is like picking the top 5 ways to die.
Why don't you start us off? I'm curious what you picked.
All right, so out of all these shit,
you did not remember any of this shit.
Yeah, out of all the shit stains that are the Survivor Series, my number 1 was actually 2002. You might not remember that one. That's the one where Shawn Michaels came back in the main event, winning the World Championship to culminate his comeback. That also had Big Show ending Brock Lesnar's undefeated streak to win the WWE Championship. And my favorite match of the night and one of the highlights of that time period, Trish Stratus versus Victoria in a hardcore match.
That's a really good one. I actually wish I put that down. Shawn had the doo-doo brown tights. That was also the Elimination Chamber was actually at the Survivor Series pay-per-view, if I remember correctly. That's where Shawn won the belt back, I want to say, was at the Elimination Chamber.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. And, it was – the doo-doo tights were fantastic. I really, truly enjoyed those. But overall, it was actually a hell of a card.
Yeah. All right, what else we got?
My number 2 is actually Survivor Series 2001. Now, this might surprise a lot of people because this put the exclamation point on one of the worst angles, the ECW invasion of the WWE. And that's one of the reasons why I chose it, is because it put an end to that crap and I didn't have to watch it anymore. Other than that, you also had the Hardy Boys versus the Dudley Boys. And then you had Trish Stratus actually once again winning the vacant women's championship at that point. But it was one of the first times we got to really see the Hardys and the Dudleys, and it kicked off what would be a great feud for years to come.
Yeah. It was basically it was ECW and former WCW talent. They were calling themselves the Alliance at that time because they didn't own the rights to ECW yet. There was a little bit of hold off on that. And so basically, it was WWE versus the Alliance, and that was the final of that angle. Yeah, that was, you know what? That was not a great angle, but that show was the end of that, and it was a big storyline nonetheless.
And that's what makes it memorable for me is it's more the story than the actual event. Bless you. Another one for me, and my number 3 spot is Survivor Series 1996. Do you remember anything about that one?
That, oh man, you correct me if I'm wrong here. Is that when Bret Hart came back to wrestle Steve Austin?
You are 100% correct. The main event is actually Psycho Sid versus Shawn Michaels for the WWE Championship.
Okay.
If you remember, Sid had turned on Shawn Michaels. So you had that, and then you had Steve Austin versus Bret Hart. To me, that Steve Austin-Bret Hart match, if you go back and watch it, still holds up today. It just was a hell of a match. And it was also The Rock's debut.
Oh, yes.
That's and you can see The Rock in all his glory in that first event. That's one of the I think he should have stuck with that outfit that he wore that night. I think that it would have made his career even richer.
Also, Undertaker versus Mankind that night. They went to
Boiler Room, right?
What's that? No, that was
not the Boiler Room. That was just a straight up
match.
Yeah.
After the Boiler Room and after the Buried Alive, they went to a straight match. It was Taker kind of coming back after being buried alive. But yeah, and also to follow up too, and hey, by the way, good picks. Obviously, you had to do some research because you didn't like this.
I did. I actually don't like the Survivor Series in general, but I went back and I found some of the ones that had some of the matches on it that I truly enjoyed.
Right.
And that's how I picked them.
And Sid actually got a very favorable response that night, despite being the heel. And he literally hit Sean's like 60-something-year-old trainer, Jose Lothario, and they ended up taking the camera. And
hit him with the camera.
And was just cheered. The garden went nuts for him. Probably Sid's greatest moment.
Yeah, so a lot of people think that led to the death of Jose 20 years later. But in 2011 Survivor Series is my number 4. That's the one actually where The Rock had his first match in 7 years with John Cena against The Miz and R-Truth. That's now while their opponents weren't necessarily great, seeing The Rock back in the ring obviously was a huge moment. And then you had CM Punk defeating Alberto Del Rio for the WWE Championship, and that pretty much just made the crowd explode when he got that championship wrapped around his waist. So for me, that's one of the big Survivor Series.
So that's their 4, I believe.
That's 4.
Yes.
That's and now I'm going to hit you with one that's going to surprise you because you're going to expect me to go with one of the older ones, and I'm going with 2009.
Okay.
2009 was actually John Cena versus Shawn Michaels versus Triple H, and The Undertaker versus Chris Jericho versus The Big Show for both of the world titles. So those were just great all-around matches for it, and then it also had a great elimination tag matches during the course of the evening. And you got to see that was one of the points in times where Kofi Kingston was just starting, Drew McIntyre was just starting, Sheamus was just starting, and all of them had big wins on the pay-per-view.
Yeah, and I want to say what I remember about that was that Shawn Michaels actually kicked off the show kicked off that triple threat match by super kicking his partner, Triple H, in the face.
Yes.
Hey, this is all about the belt.
So that is my 5. I did not pick any of the nostalgic ones that a lot of you guys are going to pick because I think that those ones were straight garbage.
All right, well, it's just me here today. So Survivor Series 87, I did pick the first one for nostalgia reasons. Survivor Series 91, that's where Undertaker won the world title. We talked about that before. Tombstone and Hulk Hogan. 97, it's the most infamous Survivor Series of all time. It's the Montreal Screwjob.
I think a lot of people even forget that was a Survivor Series, to be honest with you.
Right, yeah. So I had to have that on there.
Which clearly shows the importance of the Survivor Series.
2019, that was the year that NXT was actually involved in the brand supremacy, and they won. And
that almost made my list, and if NXT wasn't a dead brand, it would have.
And finally, 2014 Survivor Series, because that was when the icon Sting made his debut into WWE, and that was quite a moment and not expected.
So once again, that would have made my list also, but what followed that Survivor Series and what they did to Sting is why I try to forget it.
I don't think we've got any of the same picks. It is just me and you, but I think we'll pick a winner, actually, because I'm going to agree with one of your picks. And I'm going to agree the very first one you mentioned, where I believe it was Shawn won the world title, and then Big Show ended up stealing
Brock Lesnar's streak.
That was a really surprising moment for the time. Lesnar also threw Big Show around like a baby, and that was the first time we ever saw him like that.
Also, don't forget that Trish Stratus overcame Victoria in a hardcore match.
Yes, she did. So I'm going to say that's our number one pick.
Yeah,
And-
I'm happy to go with that one also. I think that out of what's normally a shitstorm of a show, that one had the most viable matches on it.
Absolutely. Now, before we talk about our top 5 matches of the week, how about a little commercial for some shows that are on the buzz as well?
Yo, where's the competition? Bring on the competition. We need some competition. Y'all ain't no competition. It's time to ball. Yeah, shawty, time to brawl. Cause see, we bout to stomp y'all from the jump fall. Me worried not at all. Your team is gonna fall. Hope you learned something from it, cause we schooling all of y'all. Putting you to shame. Don't hate you even came. Bringing the pain to anybody coming through the lane. Simple and plain, we gon' play it like we playing dames. Ain't got a chance, even if we give away the game. So hope you brought your best. Go put your skills to the test. An early off season, about to lay your team to rest. Chalk is another loss. That's what it's gonna cost. Go with your instincts if you're having second thoughts. Your buck, this is where it stops, player. From the point to the center, whole team got hops, player. We be the kings of this division, here to knock you out the box, player. Just wait until I get the rock, player. We tired of playing losers. Oh, y'all think y'all some winners? No matter who we up against.
So, all right, we're going to talk our top 5 of the week. So me and AJ just had recorded like our top 5 male wrestlers of the year before we did this. And when we were shooting the shit a little bit afterwards for the show, we talked a little bit about a top 5 moment that we're both going to have this week. So I'm going to say MJF versus Punk on the mic, but rather than talk about that yet, I'll let you have the floor and we'll go back and forth for that at the end. So save that one for last. MLW this week, Thanksgiving Day. I like that MLW does this every year now. It's like their Thanksgiving tradition, like Survivor Series. They actually have a show on their YouTube. And this year they had Alex Kane, who's like the suplex assassin. He basically, suplexes everybody around. And he won the MLW national title in a ladder match. He also interfered and cost Calvin Tankman, another huge prospect working for MLW, a match against TJP. And TJP advanced. That was the Opera Cup semifinals. So right now it's TJP versus Davey Richards in the finals of the Opera Cup. And I'm just happy to have a show out. So it made my list for the week. I didn't want everything to be AEW because other than that, I had basically the Danielson Hangman Page segment.
Is that the show producer Joe went to live?
MLW?
Yeah, and I know he was going to a show live on Thanksgiving Day.
No, that wasn't live. No, he went to Beyond Wrestling show live. I did not see that, but Mike Bennett was on the show, and Taven was also on the show. So they had a lot of good stars. Remember Sugar Dunkinton, who was in AEW for a little bit there.
Mike Bennett's actually on the show tonight in Bethany at the NEW Asylum. He is actually the headquarters there, their home field, if you will. Mike Bennett's actually on the show there.
Yeah, and also Mike Bennett and Taven are defending the Ring of Honor tag titles at the NWA Hard Times pay-per-view. Carmelo Hayes was on the show, but not on it. Oh, interesting. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, because
he can't be on the show.
Yeah, he's there. It's interesting he was even there, but he's from the area, so that's kind of cool that he was around. Good scoop there, the buzz.
I like the fact we can talk about this after, if you will, because we're talking about the top 5 right now. But Carmella Hayes' freaking partner there doesn't make the team, but Rick Steiner's son does for the War Games.
Oh yeah, well, good reason.
Where are we going to get a fourth?
I'll get to your top 5. Mine. I had another thing I had was people throwing the belt back at Cody in that tag match on AEW Dynamite this week.
Yeah,
it was very reminiscent to stuff that happened to John Cena back when they were doing the ECW One Night Stand, where he lost it to RVD. He lost that title, and what's interesting about that was I believe that was at the Hammerstein Ballroom, which segues to my final top 5 of the week. GCW coming to the Hammerstein Ballroom.
Sold it out
this week. It sold out, and it was announced this week that Eddie Kingston will also be on that show. So very cool for GCW. They got the Briscoes. I know that were already announced going to be there. Now Eddie Kingston's announced. It's so great I mean, we talked about it before, but I really just love that all these companies are like sharing talent nowadays, with the exception of
Eddie Kingston is also on a lot of shows for NEW, which actually is here in the state of Connecticut.
He was. And now, all right, well, why don't we get to your list? Like you said, we'll save the MJF Punk stuff. We'll talk about that in a minute. I know that's going to be on your list. So what else you got here?
So my top 5 of the week is, first of all, this week was not great. It had a few decent segments to it, which I enjoyed. I really enjoyed. I enjoy anything with Kaylee Ray. I think Kaylee Ray is fantastic. I liked her coming out and being the last member of the team with Io Shirai for the War Games on NXT. I think that that's going to be a hell of a fight inside the War Games cage. And then you've also got another moment from NXT this week. To me, Rick Steiner's son is actually a good addition to the last person on that match, but I love the other team. Having freaking Pete Dunne, having Johnny Gargano, having Ciampa, and then who's their fourth one?
LA Knight.
Oh, yeah.
He's the one that kind of doesn't almost quite fit in because it's all the old school guys, basically. And LA Knight's, he's more there than the new guys. But if you look at it, he's like that guy.
I think he's actually older than the other three.
He is. Well, and also he was technically
maybe not Ciampa.
many years ago. Yeah, in that system at least.
The last time he was in NXT, it actually looked like it does now.
Yes, that's actually accurate.
So that was actually a highlight for me, just because I'm looking forward to that War Games, and because there wasn't a lot of highlights this week. That was a highlight for me. Another highlight for me this week was actually on AEW. I enjoy all things with Bryan Danielson.
Sure.
Right now, he's been on fire, and the way he's interacting with Hangman Page and what he did Colt Boom Boom Cabana, I enjoy that. I can't wait to see who he beats up this week coming up in Atlanta. And then my last one and my final one before we go to the CM Punk and that stuff, my other moment is actually Britt Baker. What she does on there, her interactions, and it's not one specific moment with her. She had a lot of great moments this week, but that Thunder Rosa match between what's her name, Hayter, Hayter and freaking Thunder Rosa, and the way Britt Baker interjects herself, that match itself was one of my favorite moments of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, like I said, we're going to talk about this segment a little bit on this Thursday's Coming Wrestling episode. I believe that's the episode Jason Strife will be on there as well. And we're going to talk about top male wrestlers of the year. And then we're going to have a little chat about this Punk MJF thing. So to make it a little different, rather than what we talked about already, put a little slant on this, I'd like to know, where do you think these guys are going to actually wrestle?
I think they're going to draw it out for a little while. I don't think they're going to get their hands on each other for a little while. They might scrap or have to be pulled apart or whatever. But if they're smart, they're going to hold it off until they get to TBS. And then I think they're going to try to get a big rating for that first show on TBS. Mm-hmm. And I think your main event is going to be MJF versus CM Punk.
There's so many big shows coming up because they could do it. I think it's a little soon, but there's the Long Island show. That's December 8th. That's where MJF is from. But I don't think they'll do it there.
I don't think that's it.
No, I think they'll continue the angle there.
Yeah.
And I think that Battle of the Belts, which is going to be on TNT, but it's like one of their first specials, I think that's going to be probably all title matches, the way it looked like to me. Yeah. Which, by the way, if they do the finals of the TBS Women's Championship, you have Britt Baker defending her belt, you have the TNT title, and you have the tag title and the men's world title. That's 5 matches. AEW likes to give time to their matches. That's a card. You really don't need
that's going to be a hell of a show if they put it together the way they are. Yeah. And I think they're also going to end the TBS tournament during that Battle of the Belt show also.
Too. That would be 5. Yeah. So I don't think you need to do that at MJF Punk there. I think you could make this actually last all the way to the next pay-per-view, which I don't think is Revolution.
I think they're going to try and pop. This is just my opinion. I think they're going to try to pop the rating on that first show on TBS. And that's why I see that happening there.
Could be. Now, like I said, we're going to talk more about this Thursday. Yeah,
What-
for me, man, go ahead.
There's an interesting show coming up, and I know this is off topic, but there's an interesting
That's fine.
show coming up in WWE called Day One.
Right.
Unless
No
you read it
Max
wrong,
Sasha, right?
unless you read it wrong, and then it's one day. But either way, that looks like an interesting show that they're going to have. I guess it's just going to be a one-time thing in January. You don't typically see other events in January the same month as the Royal Rumble, so it's kind of intriguing that they're doing that.
Yeah, it's on New Year's Day as well, too.
Yeah.
Or New Year's Eve.
I think it's New Year's Day, and
New Year's
then
Day, right.
it's New Year's Day on the holiday, and then obviously so Day One, but then also I mean you got Roman Reigns and Day One, so
Right.
it's got to be an interesting thing.
Yeah, I would tell you what I did like about that is that they took the month of December off, and there's no pay-per-views. I like if the WWE tries to scale back a little bit on pay-per-views. I think that would be really good for us fans because obviously they can't keep up. Like, with all these-
I like that they're scaling back on it because it means I have to watch one less garbage pay-per-view from the WWE.
yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't know. Like, we really need a Day One. Like, I wish we could just wait till Royal Rumble. You know.
Speaking of Day One, where's Randy Oscar?
Yeah, I don't know, man. Homie ain't here today. I didn't send him.
I'm working the fields.
You know, out there plowing.
What's he up in New Hampshire? We're helping Jesse plow the fields. I mean, what's going on here?
You know, those two are best friends, I believe. But all right. Well, on that note, I think that's about it for this week. There wasn't really again this booster shot. Good for him. I don't think there was a lot to really talk about this week.
There wasn't. We can talk a little bit more about the CM Punk actual interaction with MJF.
I mean, we're going to talk about that Thursday, though. You have anything you want to add? It's going to be different.
Well, yeah, because we're on the live show, and people who tune in for the freaking live show deserve something special.
Okay.
So let's give our actual heartfelt feelings on this damn thing.
All right.
That's I think MJF came across as a freaking champ. I love the way it went back and forth. CM Punk was very good in his timing, allowing MJF to get his stuff out. I love the interaction of, I know you were a fan of mine because you have my poster in your bedroom and stuff of that nature. I absolutely love the interaction between the two of them, and I love the fact that nobody interrupted them.
Would you say the best line of the whole segment was, "You're a less famous Miz"? Was that the best?
Oh, my God. The crowd started chanting Miz.
Right.
Miz got a louder crowd chant on the freaking AEW than he has in the WWE in the last decade.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of good lines. Like MJF referenced the UFC career of Punk. All good stuff. Taking your ball, go home crying like a little bitch.
Oh, it's fantastic. That's even making jokes about the reference of, no, I did cheer for you. However, this is not the same CM Punk that I cheered for.
Also, making Punk with the reference of the Rosie O'Donnell show.
That was fantastic too.
When you were marking out on Rosie O'Donnell. Yeah, all good stuff. I think the line of the night, though, and we'll take that little slant on this too. I have to say is you're a less famous Miz. Like that one was.
First of all, anytime you can insult somebody by comparing them to the Miz, that's fantastic. Now, in that same breath, I'm going to stick up for the Miz here. The Miz has done this now for a very long time and has gotten more out of less talent than any person I know.
That's a backhanded compliment, I think, but that's what you do.
He's the third most talented wrestler out of Cleveland, and probably the most famous of the three.
Okay, Johnny Gargano. Who's the other one?
You're not even remembering him. Dolph Ziggler's from Cleveland.
Is Dolph from Cleveland?
Yeah, that's where he's actually from.
You say so.
That's why they actually get along so well.
You know the vibe. All right. Well, that's all I got for this week, man. I don't have a lot, like I said. So, Working Fans Podcast, live show, Man They Call Dave, AJ Strangebrew.
We do the work so you don't have to.